Hey folks, welcome into the Cam Rogers Show. I am Cam Rogers, back and better than ever. It is May 30th, 2018, episode 109 of the program. Hit me up on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. We are presented by Autolist, and boy, do we have a fun hour on tap for you guys. We have this bombshell report that really has some interesting accusations about 76ers GM Bryan Colangelo. This coming from The Ringer. I will document everything that report is discussing and what is to come in regards to that. Plus, a report that just came out a few minutes ago about President Trump directly influencing the new national anthem policy. I'll talk about how that came to be and all the steps that went through. Plus, the top 5 Super Bowl 53 favorites according to the latest Vegas odds, and a final word about Tiger Woods and how he'll perform this week at the Memorial Tournament. Plus, time permitting, little NBA Finals as well. But let's get into the developing story here. 76ers GM Bryan Colangelo has been caught up in a Twitter burner scandal, allegedly using 5 burner accounts on Twitter to leak sensitive information and make criticisms of his own players, some current and some former. So an investigative report from The Ringer claims the following. Colangelo went to extreme lengths to attack Sixers players, including All-Star center Joel Embiid, smeared rival NBA officials, and defended Colangelo's own reputation. Now, Colangelo admitted to using one of the 5 Twitter accounts The Ringer claims he is currently using or was using, and he did also respond to things via a long statement here, so we have a couple of graphics to kind of document that. So, in the statement, quote, "Like many of my colleagues in sports, I have used social media as a means to keep up with the news. While I have never posted anything whatsoever on social media, I have used the at Phila123456 Twitter account referenced in this story to monitor our industry and other current events." Went on to say, "This storyline is disturbing to me on many levels, as I am not familiar with any of the other accounts that have been brought to my attention, nor do I know who is behind them or what their motives may be in using them." So we'll flash some of the tweets from these burner accounts throughout this segment here, but essentially Colangelo is saying, yeah, I was using one of the 5 Twitter accounts referenced by The Ringer, so obviously this tweet here would not be from Colangelo, at least according to Colangelo himself. So in regards to Joel Embiid, that's where I am seeing a lot of the interesting kind of criticisms of his star player. So The Ringer claims one of Colangelo's burner accounts slammed Joel during the 2016-2017 season for being a, quote, idiot whose head is getting too big after he was hit with an injury. One of the accounts in question also scolded Embiid for taking off his shirt and dancing at a Meek Mill concert when he was out because of a knee injury. You can't make this stuff up, folks. And Embiid also poked fun at the GM on Twitter, but did eventually say that he does believe him. According to ESPN, Embiid and Colangelo spoke on the phone. Colangelo wanted to clear the air. Embiid, for now, believes in his GM. Here's what he said, quote, "He called me just to deny the story. Gotta believe him until proven otherwise. If true, though, that would be really bad." Colangelo also criticized #1 draft pick Markelle Fultz, former Philly Stars Nerlens Noel, calling him a punk, by the way, and Jahlil Okafor, as well as former 76ers GM Sam Hinkie, Colangelo's predecessor. So here is the interesting note on how The Ringer reported this story, and it's very intriguing. So the company reached out to the 76ers to verify 2, not 5, 2 of the accounts, and asking whether they were in fact Colangelo's. So this, in a sense, was a test to see what would happen to the other 3 Twitter accounts. So on that same afternoon, after reaching out to the 76ers, the 3 accounts not mentioned switched from public to private. So that obviously is not a good look for Colangelo here, but here's the main issue indicating some sort of guilt. These tweets discussed business practices, but also these personal vendettas and beefs inside and outside the organization. So we're not just talking about typical day-to-day stuff. We're not talking about typical just browsing the news, which seems to be Colangelo's defense here. Yeah, I just wanted to keep up with current events, and this is how I did that. We're talking about personal attacks to your own players, calling them idiots, calling them punks, making fun of them for going to a Meek Mill concert, for crying out loud. As the GM, in theory, you are the wizard that puts the chess pieces together to make a franchise successful. In theory, of course. And to do the opposite, in my eyes, is simply counterintuitive to your job. Right? As a general manager, you are certainly not a figurehead. You are making big-time decisions in terms of personnel, in terms of the future of the franchise, and saying tweets like this about, well, did Okafor pass the team physical? You will not say not to lose other chance, but I bet the farm it's what happened kind of thing. Like making these divisive tweets obviously is counterproductive to what is on your job description, i.e. team cohesion, team success, putting players in the right position to have success for a particular team. Now, by the way, I will mention, this is a normal thing in the sense that executives have burner accounts. That is not, some sort of abnormal thing. But this in particular about calling out your own players and stirring up controversy, at least in the public eye, is not normal. So you gotta wonder, by the way, is this a systemic, chronic issue? Is there more to this story than just Bryan Colangelo and just the Philadelphia 76ers? Are there more GMs out there, not just in the NBA, we're talking NFL, NHL, MLB, etc., that are using these burner accounts to influence or perhaps get back at or perhaps stir up controversy with particular players, executives within a franchise and outside a franchise? So this is the main story now. But there could be many more dominoes to fall as we go throughout finding new information and really fantastic reporting. I give a lot of credit to The Ringer in regards to this. We will revisit this story later in the show as well if some of you folks are late coming into the Cam Rogers show. But as we stand right now, the developing story, 76ers GM Bryan Colangelo caught up in a Twitter burner scandal where he allegedly used 5 burner accounts to leak sensitive information and make criticisms of his own players, including Joel Embiid, Markelle Fultz, Nerlens Noel, and more. So that is the story right now on the Cam Rogers Show. We'll get back to you guys later with more details. We're presented by AutoList, a fantastic website and app where you can get your car shopping done in a flash. Autolist.com is the way to go. But also, when you're on the go, download the app for iPhone and Android users today. And we thank them for sponsoring the program here today. And I'm telling you, if you use Autolist, it saves you a boatload of time because car shopping done is done in a flash. We thank them for sponsoring the show here today. Another piece of breaking news here on the show in regards to the latest NFL headlines here, and we'll start things off with a Wall Street Journal exclusive that came out moments before the show, how the President of the United States, the leader of the free world, the 45th man in charge of this country, influenced the NFL's policy in regards to the NFL's national anthem. Okay, so here's the deal. Now, there's a lot to this Wall Street Journal article, by the way, and if you go out and read it, it's documented in not really chronological order, which is how I should feel it should be, or in an inverted pyramid type of way. But here is essentially how it goes. So this is all coming from the documents from the depositions of Colin Kaepernick's grievance case against the National Football League. As we know, Jerry Jones was recently deposed in the Colin Kaepernick grievance case against the NFL, alleging that, of course, all 32 NFL owners colluded against Kaepernick to keep him out of the league. So according to the Journal, President Trump said the following in a phone call with Jerry Jones, quote, "This is a very winning, strong issue for me," saying that he wants Jerry Jones to stick with this, to fight for this, to be the cause and the reason for the NFL implementing a new policy in regards to the national anthem. A White House official said Trump was essentially advising Jones on what he believed would be good for the country and good for the sport. So throughout these depositions, including owner of the Texans, Bob McNair, as well as owner of the Dolphins, Stephen Ross, there you see Jerry on your list there as an example of some of the folks who have been deposed throughout this case. Trump shifted the conversation through his public statements and Twitter rants. So I do want to go back to what he said last September in a stump speech in Alabama, where he essentially said that if a hypothetical player knelt during the national anthem, his team's owner should, quote, "get that son of a bee off the field and now," fill in the blanks. On Twitter, he later encouraged owners to fire those players and suggested a boycott. And boom, full stop. Here's why this story is important. Suggested a boycott. We are talking about the President of the United States, the one single individual who probably has the most influence in terms of PR, in terms of businesses, etc., in this entire country, perhaps even the world. So behind the scenes, the likes of Stephen Ross and Jerry Jones and Bob McNair are scrambling here because they're worried they will lose sponsors, they will lose money, they will lose revenue due to bad PR coming from the president. All right, so let's also note that the owners didn't necessarily agree with how President Trump was going about this national anthem debate. They didn't like how he used the B word. They didn't like how his language on Twitter really wasn't reflective of the country, at least according to some of these documents here. But that didn't matter because the main motivation here is that Bob McNair and Stephen Ross and Jerry Jones and all these owners were scared of losing sponsors, of boycotts, of losing fans, of seeing empty seats in the stands. And it didn't matter how they thought the president went about this matter. What really was the important point here was that the president was actually talking about it. Donald Trump was taking to Twitter, was going on stump speeches in Alabama and the like to talk about this matter. And that's all the NFL owners needed to hear, needed to know. It didn't matter how the president went about it, because the owners then saw potential boycotts, potential problems with sponsors. So Robert Kraft, another example, reportedly didn't like how Trump handled the situation, but at the end of the day, these owners felt like they had no choice but to go along with what the president wanted. And the president wanted a policy where players were required to stand for the national anthem. So what happened last week? Owners' meetings in Atlanta? Look at that. Players are now required to stand during the national anthem. And if they don't, teams will be fined. And teams could also punish their respective players however they see fit, although players do have the option to stay in the locker room. So it's like dot after dot after dot, domino after domino after domino, if you will. All these connections are starting to fall in line. So full stop. Here is the story. Colin Kaepernick has a grievance case against the NFL. He is alleging that all 32 NFL owners are colluding against him to keep him out of the league. Okay? Colin Kaepernick deposed some of these guys and plenty of others in sworn testimony, not in a court setting, but essentially sworn questioning, where if you lie, you could be in some serious trouble. And The statements made in these depositions were leaked to the Wall Street Journal, perhaps from the Kaepernick camp, perhaps from somebody else, who knows, essentially saying that owners did not like how the president was going about his messaging with the national anthem policy, but they also felt like they had to fall in line with what Donald Trump wanted. And that was a requirement to stand during the national anthem. And the owners were scared because they were afraid of perhaps losing sponsorships, seeing a boycott happen. And so the owners did what they had to do. They felt cornered. The leader of the free world made his stance known, and Jerry Jones, Bob McNair, Robert Kraft, Stephen Ross, all these owners said, we got to implement something. We have to etch something into legislation. The owners' meetings happened last week. There you go, folks. It's now a requirement to stand during the national anthem. So it goes from the president, it goes to Jerry Jones and his depositions, it goes to Stephen Ross, it goes to Bob McNair, it goes to these owner meetings last week, and it's just domino after domino after domino, and here's where we are. Totally new policy, more division perhaps, that's up for debate, and one of the main storylines going into this NFL regular season. Who's going to stay in the locker room? Who's going to stand during the national anthem? Who's going to go onto the field and kneel during the national anthem? And that's one of the big-time stories that we are continuing to follow here. So there you go, the president at the middle of all of this. All right, let's continue on with some more headlines here. Dez Bryant, hinting at joining the San Francisco 49ers, said in an Instagram comment that he wants to play for San Francisco. That was in a response to someone asking him what team he wants to play for. He did later delete the comment. So there's that, but of course, it's the internet. It's 2018. We can save, we can screenshot. There you go. And if Dez were to go to the 49ers, he'd be joining the likes of Pierre Garçon and Marquise Goodwin and Trent Taylor. And I used to have the 49ers on my top 5 landing spots for Dez Bryant for a couple of reasons, because I thought San Francisco was pretty aggressive so far in the free agency period. Maybe they would have went out and looked into Dez Bryant. They also had the salary cap space, but as you see here, they're no longer on my list, and I'm not going to put them there just because Dez Bryant wants to be in San Francisco, because we also heard that Dez Bryant wants to be with the New York Giants, and as you see on your screen there, I don't have the Giants on my list either. I still am holding firm that New England and Indianapolis and Seattle make the most sense in my eyes from a need standpoint, from a salary cap standpoint, as well as from what we've seen in the past, a historical standpoint, more specifically with the New England Patriots, because New England has brought in some old veterans before and kind of revamped their careers a little bit. That said, Brandon Marshall is now employed. We'll talk about him later. My question is, so why is Dez Bryant still out there? Is there something we don't know? Because Brandon Marshall is coming off an injury-riddled campaign in 2017. Dez Bryant is not. So why is Dez still on the open market? He did reject an offer from the Baltimore Ravens, at a multi-year deal at that. Is he wide receiver number 1? Of course not. Not at the stage of his career right now. But can he help a team? I firmly believe so. I think he can help the likes of Seattle, in New England, and Indianapolis. And I still have Seattle there because, well, they still have needs at wide receiver despite signing Brandon Marshall. So there you go. Dez Bryant hinting at joining the 49ers. I will tell you right here, right now, that I don't feel Dez would mesh very well with San Francisco. I don't think San Fran will look into signing Dez. Like I mentioned, they have Goodwin, Garçon, and Taylor. Dante Pettis, their rookie there as well. So doesn't make the most sense in the world. But Dez made his preference known most recently on Instagram. All right, let's get to the next storyline here. This coming out of the holiday weekend. According to a report, players may actually sit out the entire season until Colin Kaepernick is signed. So players are currently considering this act, and this also alludes to Eric Reid as well until he is signed. Both those players have their grievance cases against the NFL, colluding or alleging that the NFL is colluding against them. Apparently, some players are hoping to get 25% of their fellow teammates and players to participate in this sit-out, if you will. And This, of course, comes after the new NFL national anthem policy was created by the NFL owners, essentially saying that the players have to stand during the anthem if they are on the field, or they have the option of staying in the locker room. I don't know how much credence this report really has, this coming from Sean King, and I'm sure players are considering it. Whether or not they will act on it is the major question mark here. You got to think about the fact that players want to play football and they want to make money. I know they also want to make a statement, and I know a lot of them are in the back corner there standing in unison with Colin Kaepernick, but to the extent of sitting out an entire season seems to be a little far-fetched. I don't know if that actually will go down, but it is a story, and we are going to report upon it here on the Cam Rogers Show. Kaepernick, Eric Reid, now enter the month of June, still unsigned. If you were an NFL player, would you sit out until Colin Kaepernick was signed? Let me know in the comments section here on Facebook Live as well as YouTube. I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think about Colin Kaepernick and this ongoing story with him, Eric Reid, the national anthem, anything of the sort, the president as well. Let me know what you guys think. All right, let's talk about a wide receiver for the Atlanta Falcons and Julio Jones. Sounds like he's in a good place with Atlanta, saying there's no bad blood between me or the team. Quote, everybody on the outside trying to look in and trying to destroy what we built there. I'm not going nowhere. I'll be there. I love the team. I love the organization. I love everybody there. I'm good. That's what Julio Jones recently said. And he also said he isn't upset about his new contract and hoping to eventually get some sort of extension here. He doesn't want people to think he's upset with the organization, and I understand that. A lot of players are sitting out or sat out for voluntary OTAs because they are voluntary. If you're an NFL player and you're a star player, perhaps the best at your respective position, why go to OTAs when they're voluntary and you can just work out on your own in Alabama, which is exactly what Julio Jones is doing. And oh, by the way, you can prevent injury, kind of like with what happened with Hunter Henry, tight end of the Los Angeles Chargers there, who is out essentially for the year because of a torn ACL. So I understand where Julio Jones is coming from. I agree. I don't think there's a lot of there with this story. I think he will be back for mandatory minicamp. Head coach Dan Quinn has been vocal in saying that that will happen as well. So nothing too much to worry about here, Atlanta Falcons fans. But I will say this, in regards to voluntary OTAs, like if you were a student and you were in high school, for example, and a school day was voluntary, would you go? Obviously not. Especially if you're a star student, you're like a 4.0 student, like you can skip one day. Julio Jones is a 4.0 student in that regard. So there you go. Let's go to another star wide receiver here. OBJ almost fully cleared to play, according to new head coach Pat Shurmur, saying, quote, he was pretty close. So OBJ has been present at voluntary OTAs, and he will continue to go throughout the practices and the offseason workouts and all that such, despite being at the center of some trade rumors as well as some displeasure, if you will, with the Giants' leadership in regards to his contract and how OBJ wants a contract extension and so on. But he's been there, almost ready to be fully cleared to play as well. He's been in and out of offseason training, and Pat Shurmur also said that Beckham is chomping at the bit to fully return to practice. So that's certainly good news if OBJ is excited to get back on the football field at full speed at 100% and to be with the New York Giants. Certainly sounds like OBJ ain't going anywhere, and he probably will just have to play his final year of his contract and then have to go through negotiations next offseason with the New York Giants. But there you go, Odell Beckham Jr. close to being cleared there. Good news for the New York Giants out there. Some not so good news for the New England Patriots, at least from a PR standpoint. Former Patriot Cassius Marsh reportedly, or actually not really reportedly, he said it. He didn't have a lot of fun with the New England Patriots when he was on the team. So saying, quote, they don't have any fun there. There's nothing fun about it. This going to the San Francisco Chronicle. Marsh, now a member of the 49ers. The Niners picked him up off waivers last season. Marsh said Belichick didn't let him play at his strengths, saying he covered receivers and running backs instead of rushing the passer like he was used to at Seattle. Also confronted Belichick, but didn't see any change happen. So, quote, I just wasn't a fan, and so I basically, without asking to get cut, I kind of asked to get cut. So a little wordplay there from Cassius Marsh, like, hey, I don't want to be here. Can you, cut me? That'd be great. Release me, let me go, kind of deal. So eventually was claimed off waivers, like I said, by the 49ers. After playing 9 games with the New England Patriots, it's a 2-year, $7.7 million contract extension back in February. So obviously an important part to the 49ers and their ability to create sacks and get after the passer and all that. He will be used the right way in San Francisco, that I can tell you. But here is the broad stroke of the issue, and this is just a subplot to the main plot here with the New England Patriots, specifically Bill Belichick. And I want to thank Cassius Marsh for feeding into my theory that the Patriots organization is taking the fun out of football, particularly Bill Belichick. Gronk and Brady certainly wanted to send messages in regards to that when Gronk took forever to commit to playing for this year, and Brady is busy skipping OTAs in favor of the Formula One Grand Prix and trips to the United Kingdom. All right, so Cassius Marsh is just another example of the discord, perhaps, within the Patriots organization, and to that, I am just going to sip on my water and say, well, but that's none of my business, right? Remember that meme? Yeah. Thank you for feeding into my theory, Cassius Marsh. So you have to wonder if this is the tip of the iceberg, right? Will there be more former Patriots talking about this situation and talking about this franchise and how it is currently run? I have talked about the end of the Brady-Belichick dynasty before. Not necessarily that it's happening right now, but we are getting closer and closer and closer. It's drip after drip after drip. And I don't care if you're a wizard of a head coach. I don't care if you're Bill Belichick or Lombardi or anybody. If your players do not buy in to what you are preaching, you will not be successful. And Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk recently wrote an article saying that maybe Brady has just had it with the Bill Belichick reign, if you will. Sometimes situations just get stale. Be sure to let me know in the reaction poll. It is at the end of the Brady-Belichick dynasty. Are things starting to crumble before us? Is the erosion happening? Give me a heart for yes, a like for not quite. The big-time story as well, could the Patriots go out and get Bryant? Zachary certainly thinks so, and Dez should go to the Patriots. Zachary got New England at number 1 on my list for top landing spots for Bryant. I think it makes a lot of sense. You look at the Patriots losing Danny Amendola to the Miami Dolphins, Brandon Cooks via a trade to the Los Angeles Rams. You're really going to trust Jordan Matthews to be a reliable receiver? And Dez Bryant doesn't have to do a million things. They still have Hogan and Edelman as well. So it's not a lot of pressure on Dez, as well as the fact that Dez could certainly be in contention to get a Super Bowl ring as well. So there you go. Thanks for the comments, Zachary. Be sure to hit me up in comments as well, folks, and we could feature yours here on the broadcast. All right, let's get to the next storyline here. Jerick McKinnon says the 49ers are already talking about the Super Bowl. Saying, quote, the Super Bowl. That's what the eyes are on. And this isn't the classic Super Bowl prediction in the offseason. But, Jerick, I'm telling you, just tone it down a tad. Just a tad. Because, yes, the team may be unified in its expectations. That's not really the point here. The point is we've seen before players predicting a Super Bowl victory in 99.999 repeating percent of the time, the Super Bowl victory doesn't actually happen. So why? Well, who knows? There are probably a vast amount of reasons for it. Maybe number one, unneeded pressure on the team Number two, probably doesn't really help in terms of a chemistry standpoint when you have predictions being made and your teammates are like, dude, why would you say that? Then we have to actually like seriously go out and do it or else we look like fools kind of thing. So there are a few reasons. And of course, for the 49ers, they're a playoff team. I think they're a top 10 team in the NFL, maybe top 12. And they went out and got some major pieces this offseason, Richard Sherman and Weston Richburg as well. Whether or not they make it to the Super Bowl, I think is beside the point. I think they're in for a successful season. But in terms of what McKinnon has said, admitting that you're talking Super Bowl, it usually doesn't work out in your favor. I caution 49ers fans out there as well to kind of slow your roll on this whole Super Bowl 53 thing because it wasn't a great season last year, and I know the end of the season in 2017 had a lot of momentum, particularly with Jimmy G leading the way with a 5-0 record, and you get McKinnon, you get Richard Sherman, you get Weston Richburg, right? You get some good players via the draft as well, McGlinchey, DJ Reed, all these guys, Tarvarius Moore. I understand that. Rhinestone, a little sense of logic as well. Playoffs maybe, Super Bowl is a stretch though. Ryan, that's what I'm saying. Like we're talking about a team that is going through a lot of changes, and you have to essentially assume that all of these changes will mesh, will work, will supplant you into Super Bowl contention. That's a big-time reach for me. Now, playoffs, absolutely, could be in the conversation for that. Maybe in the wild card, maybe in the NFC West crown. I think the Rams actually win the NFC West. This isn't a hard prediction, but I think they are probably the favorite to land the NFC West crown. I don't have a lot of faith in Seattle. I don't have a lot of faith in Arizona. I think those two teams are rebuilding in a sense. And the NFC is very, very good, very deep. But I think the 49ers, particularly at the end of their season, could get on a run and maybe get into the playoffs. But in terms of Super Bowl, I know fans like to talk about it. I know it brings a lot of excitement. But at the same time, should probably just caution ourselves a little bit, especially when Jerick McKinnon is a new 49er. It's like, you just got there, Jerick, and you're already like saying that the team's talking Super Bowl and all that. You're probably putting a little unneeded pressure on your fellow teammates, but that's just me. Maybe I'm completely wrong. All right, let's go to the next storyline here, and we've got Cliff Averill talking about the discord that was in Seattle, especially after Super Bowl 49, when you all remember Pete Carroll and that questionable decision at the goal line to have Russell Wilson throw the football and have that ball get intercepted by one Malcolm Butler. And Cliff Averill, of course, is no longer on the Seattle Seahawks, made several comments about Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, saying, quote, if we win that Super Bowl, I think we probably would have won another one within the 2 years that went by. And Averill also said, I think a lot of the guys got turned off by the message sent by Pete Carroll following Super Bowl 50 or 49 and the repercussions of that. And, you know, it's interesting. It's kind of like comparable to the New England Patriots situation. With their decision, it's kind of funny, Malcolm Butler is the center at both of these stories here. New England's decision to bench Malcolm Butler in Super Bowl 52, where perhaps there's some discord within the Patriots. Same thing here with Seattle from Super Bowl 49 in that Pete Carroll decided to throw the football, not run with Marshawn Lynch, and here's what happened. There was an interception at the goal line. They lost the game. So according to this report here, Carroll reinvented himself as a more philosophically open and psychologically agile coach after the 2015 season. But if the Seahawks struggle this year, maybe players more and more buy less into what Pete Carroll is doing. Like I've said earlier in this show, coaching sometimes has an expiration date. And it really doesn't matter who you are in particular, unless you are the most lovable person in the history of the world. The situation can get stale. And eventually players, for whatever reason, decide to no longer buy into what you're preaching. Or, on the other side of things, the coach changes what he is preaching and the players no longer buy into what that new dynamic is. Is it the end of the Pete Carroll era here? I'm going to say not quite. I'll give up my like on that one, but let me know in the reaction poll. But boy, if we get more documentation about Pete Carroll and what he did in Seattle and continues to do, certainly could be fodder for more discussion here as we go forward with future Cam Rogers shows. All right, next storyline here, we have a new signing. And Brandon Marshall is now a member of the Seattle Seahawks. He signed a one-year deal that could reach up to $2 million with incentives included. So not a big-time 2017 season with the Giants, 18 receptions, 154 yards, no touchdowns there. 2015 season was the big-time year, at least most recently with the Jets, when he went over just a shade, 1,500 yards, 109 receptions, and 14 touchdowns. But since then, his playing ability has declined. In 2015, that was the big year, but then 2016, 59 receptions, 788 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then, of course, last year, as I talked about, injury-riddled campaign there where he didn't see a large sample size of games with New York. Marshall hasn't made the playoffs in his 12-year career, which is pretty staggering, but he is 16th in NFL history in receptions, only 23 behind Hall of Famer Randy Moss, and is just inside the top 25 in yards and touchdown receptions. Does have that bad rap of being a bit of a diva, if you will, or sometimes has the case of the drops and can, make some bad comments on the sidelines and all this stuff. But he's a good player. He's a nice big-bodied receiver, somebody that the Seattle Seahawks could certainly use because Seattle lost Jimmy Graham. They don't have that big-bodied receiver like a Brandon Marshall anymore. Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett, these are not red zone targets in a sense. So Brandon Marshall comes to town, fills a void there for Seattle. And the subplot here is obviously Des Bryant still on the market, but Brandon Marshall is not. Like, why? I want to know why, and maybe we'll get a report in regards to an answer. But there you go. Brandon Marshall, now a member of the Seattle Seahawks. How about Adrian Peterson? Has he found a team? No, he has not, but he certainly would like to join the Houston Texans. He said recently that, he's talked about how he's mentioned the Houston Texans a couple times. He trains in Houston, opened a mega gym there as well. Peterson also mentioned the Green Bay Packers, New Orleans Saints, maybe a reunion there, Carolina, Miami, as potential fits there for the former star running back, former NFL MVP as well. Adrian Peterson seems to be understanding that he is no longer the 3-down running back that he once was, because if he joins the Panthers, he won't be the lead dog. If he joins New Orleans, he certainly won't be the lead guy, and perhaps the case with the Green Bay Packers and Miami Dolphins as well. But Miami Dolphins, that'd be interesting. The ultimate grizzled veteran running back duo of Adrian Peterson and Frank Gore, a couple of top 5 fantasy running backs in their careers. Interesting stuff. All right. Let's get to the next storyline here. Mark Herzlich, linebacker of the New York Giants, wants the President of the United States to speak with the team in regards to the national anthem policy. And Herzlich said it's to remain focused on the real issue here, and maybe Herzlich feels that the main talking point or the main takeaway of this story is being buried because of all these different footnotes and subplots around the national anthem. And Herzlich is a member of the NFLPA's executive committee, so he has some influence here. He has met with NFL officials about the issue before. And as a response, by the way, head coach Pat Shurmur said he wanted to wait to discuss the new policy with his players. So Mark Herzlich is reaching out to the president, wants him to come on over, talk about the national anthem policy, and I applaud this because I have said many times on this show that I think there should be an open dialogue among many sides here on this issue. And if the president is willing to go ahead and engage in negotiations or discussions or an ongoing dialogue about this story here, I think it would certainly be a good thing. Certainly wouldn't be a bad thing, because having deferring opinions and a marketplace of ideas here in regards to this issue all in one setting is good for the long term. So there you go. Mark Herzlich reaching out to the president. All right, let's go to the next headline here, and we've got Philip Rivers wanting his old buddy back with the Los Angeles Chargers, Mr. Antonio Gates, to be exact. And why? Well, first of all, Antonio Gates is a free agent, number one. Number two is the fact that Hunter Henry recently suffered an ACL injury, and he is likely done for the season. So with that, there is a need at the tight end position. Rivers said it would get my vote to bring Antonio Gates back to LA, and the Chargers did sign Virgil Green to a 3-year contract during the free agency period, or at least the heat of it. And he's more known as a blocker, so he's not really the receiving tight end that Antonio Gates has really proven to everybody in his Hall of Fame career so far, future Hall of Fame career there. So we'll see if Gates returns to the Chargers. Stay tuned on that. Those are the latest NFL headlines here on the Cam Rogers Show. We are presented by AutoList. Looking for a used or new car? Tired of browsing a million sites? Go to Autolist.com to browse the largest source of inventory on the web, or download their top-rated mobile app for iPhone or Android today. We thank them for sponsoring the show. And with that, it's time to get into the next segment of the Cam Rogers Show. I'm talking about the 5 Super Bowl 53 favorites according to the latest Vegas odds. So these aren't my rankings per se. This is what Vegas thinks as we stand, but I will, of course, give you guys my opinions on them. We'll start things off with the Minnesota Vikings. And so they have Vegas odds of 12-1 to capture Super Bowl 53 in Atlanta. I like them to win Super Bowl 52 last year with Case Keenum heading into the playoffs. So I have to love them now with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, right? Doesn't that make the most sense? They have the league's best defense. I have zero concerns about that side of the ball. They have 2 prolific receivers, Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, along with a quality tight end, and Kyle Rudolph. Dalvin Cook is there, coming back as well. So I am a tad worried about that offensive line. They drafted second-round pick Brian O'Neill to play at tackle. We'll see how he can do. Pat Elflein wasn't very good in his rookie campaign at center. Hopefully he can have a better sophomore season. Mike Remmers has just been mediocre at best since joining the league, to be honest with you guys. So here's where I am really confident about the Vikings, particularly on this offense. New OC John DeFilippo is now calling plays, and he's coming on over from Philadelphia, and he did a great job as the Eagles' quarterbacks coach. He made Nick Foles look like, heck, the second coming of name any Hall of Famer out there, because he went on and won a Super Bowl for the Philadelphia Eagles, rushed into the fray, went on a pretty good tear for Philadelphia. No, it wasn't like lighting up the scoreboard or anything like that, but he won a Super Bowl with this team as a backup quarterback. So John DeFilippo has a good resume. I think he'll do a good job as the offensive coordinator there. And the Minnesota Vikings are going to be a team to be reckoned with. For them to have 12-1 odds, I like that number a lot. You know, I'd rather have them a little lower, and so everybody pays attention to the teams that are higher up in these odds rankings. So which team do you think will win the Super Bowl? Let me know in comments as I go throughout this segment here. Let's talk about the next team on the list. They have 10-1 odds to be victorious this coming NFL season. The Los Angeles Rams, they won the offseason, but can they win the Super Bowl? And we've seen this movie before, most notably with the Philadelphia Eagles a couple of years ago with that dream team. So the Rams really have a spectacular team, though. I don't think this is just an issue of, hey, they won the offseason, none of these players are going to mesh, and they're really going to struggle. This team is stacked with Pro Bowlers, with players who had really good seasons, if you want to go off of Pro Football Focus's grades and not just my word of mouth. Added Brandon Cooks. They re-signed John Sullivan there on that offensive line. That's very important. They go out and revamp this defense here, particularly with Aqib Talib and Ndamukong Suh. They got Aaron Donald there as well. Mentioned Brandon Cooks via the trade as you see some of these key contributors here for the LA Rams. We're talking about an offense that finished first in scoring a year ago. Featured a running back who won Offensive Player of the Year. And now you're going to tell me this team's going to have a defense with 2 elite interior players, 2 very, very good cornerbacks and a safety tandem in Johnson and Joyner that are very good in their own right. Give me the Rams all day long at these 10-1 odds. So far, I like what Vegas is doing here. So LA checks in at the 4th best odds according to Vegas. Now, I will say the Rams will have to fend off this Hollywood glitz and glamour of being a big spending team and stealing all these headlines. But all the pieces are there for them to make a big-time run. And I do like the LA Rams a lot coming up in 2018 for the NFL regular season. All right, let's go to the champs here. They have the 3rd best odds, or tied for 2nd best odds, if you want to put it that way. The Philadelphia Eagles have 8-1 Vegas odds to capture Super Bowl 53. And here is the reasoning behind why Philadelphia has a good chance to defend their title. It starts on the line of scrimmage. The offensive line and the defensive line are 2 elite units for this team. Jason Kelce got an elite grade according to Pro Football Focus and finished 1st among all centers last year. You got Brandon Brooks at guard, Lane Johnson at right tackle, Jason Peters at left tackle. You go to the defensive side in that front line, Timmy Jernigan, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Michael Bennett. You are going to win the line of scrimmage, and I'm talking to the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's how I think they're going to win a lot of games this coming season. Now, I do caution all you bettors out there and all you gamblers out there in that it's kind of hard to repeat as Super Bowl champions. The last time we actually saw it happen, the 04-05 New England Patriots. So it's been a while. So I think you kind of have to think about that as well. But I do want to talk about quarterback here. Carson Wentz progressing well in his rehab. He was seen throwing at OTAs and looked pretty good doing so, according to reports, but still had an apparent limp when running in between drills. But in that same report, he was also seen sprinting down the field, so take with that with what you wish here. And then you have the situation where, hey, even if Carson Wentz isn't good to go fully 100% for week 1 of the regular season, you have a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Nick Foles right behind him. So I hope the Eagles take their time here in trying to kind of figure out the rehab process and understand that 100% is 100%. 99% is not fully healthy. So take your time, Eagles fans, or Eagles officials, I should say, in bringing back Carson Wentz here, because if he doesn't play the preseason, you got to really understand it's going to be a slow start, at least for the beginning of the regular season, weeks 1 through 5. Because if you don't get those reps into the preseason, it kind of puts you behind the 8 ball, and that's what I'm kind of worried about with Carson Wentz there. But all things aside there at the quarterback position, you got Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, Zach Ertz. Watch out for Jay Ajayi as well. Like him a lot going into this season. All right, so I put the Eagles at 3 here. Put the Steelers at 2, despite these two teams having the same odds here, because I have more faith in Pittsburgh to get it done. So what do we think of the Pittsburgh Steelers here? So it's all about Ben, Bell, and Brown. It's the killer bees. If those 3 are intact for 16 games, then the Steelers will win the AFC North and perhaps capture a first-round bye. That's a big if, all right? We're talking about Le'Veon Bell, who could be subject to injuries next season because he's sitting out, or at least he plans to, training camp and mandatory minicamp and preseason and all this stuff because of his ongoing contract situation. And then Ben Roethlisberger has shown that he too has faced his fair share of injury problems in his career. Overall, Ben had a really good 2017 season. Antonio Brown is a top 2 wide receiver, if not the best in the league. And Bell is as good as they come at running back. Love the way in which he plays the position. So it's Roethlisberger, it's Brown, it's Bell, as you see on your screen there. Like Cam Hayward a lot on that defensive side, and I want to give a lot of love there to right guard David DeCastro. I like to give love to offensive linemen out there. DeCastro might be the best pulling guard in the NFL. Really good at those traps, really good run blocker. But I do have a main question about Le'Veon and his ability to perform at a high level starting week 1. Because he had the same plan last year, sitting out the offseason and all of this stuff. And in his first games last year, first 5 games, Bell had the following rushing totals: 32 yards, 87 yards, 61 yards, yes, 144 yards, but then back down to 47 yards. Bell will need a better start in 2018, especially considering the AFC is slowly getting better and better and better. The Titans are rising. The Houston Texans are rising. The Baltimore Ravens could jump out of nowhere and be back into the playoff conversation. Now, quickly on the defense, like I said, Cam Hayward, really good player. I like Stephon Tuitt a lot as well. The secondary is in nice shape. Artie Burns, Joe Hayden, I think they'll be just fine. Adding Morgan Burnett is a good play as well. Linebacking core, I'm a little concerned about. Vince Williams has been consistently average. John Bostic is more of a stopgap guy at best. And Bud Dupree has struggled in his 3 years in the NFL. So the Steelers could be vulnerable in run defense and defending against tight ends and running backs via the pass. All right, so I got the Steelers at 2. Vegas odds has them at 8-1. Vegas has the Eagles at 8-1 as well, but I inched up the Steelers in my own rankings here. So with that, number 1, Patriots have the 5-1 odds to capture Super Bowl 53. Tensions aside, the Patriots are the Patriots, so I don't have any problem with Vegas holding them as the favorites. The offense did lose some pieces in Danny Amendola and Brandon Cooks, but OC Josh McDaniels is remaining, which I think is important from a chemistry perspective. And Julian Edelman is expected back, fully good to go. Offensive line is actually in better shape than it was prior to the draft. Why? Well, they got Trent Brown there, who I think is a solid tackle. That likely keeps Adrian Waddle on the bench, which is very important. He's not a good player at all. And the interior of the line, and Shaq Mason and David Andrews and Joe Thuney, pretty good. It's not all that bad. So the Patriots' offensive line is in good shape. The Patriots also play a pretty good scoring defense as well. They have a game plan. They'll give up some yards, but they won't give up a lot of points. All right, so I like how they added Adrian Claiborne. Will add some good pass rushing ability, something that they have been lacking in their history. Plus, Jason McCourty helps out that secondary a lot. So it's McCourty, it's Gilmore at corner, and oh, by the way, they have another McCourty at safety as well. So the secondary looks pretty good. Main question is, has Tom Brady had it with Bill Belichick? In the interest of time, I won't get into my soliloquy in regards to that, but it was posed by Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk there, and Mike Florio is a pretty darn good insider. He knows what he's talking about, so keep in mind. All right, so there you go. The Patriots check in at number 1 according to Vegas. The Steelers are tied with the Eagles in Vegas odds. You got the Rams at 10-1, the Vikings at 12-1. If you ask me, I put the Steelers ahead of the Eagles. And then some honorable mentions. You got the Packers with 12-1 odds, the Niners with 16-1 odds to win the Super Bowl. Wow. And then a couple of T8s here. You got the Houston Texans, Kansas City Chiefs, Jacksonville Jaguars there. If I am betting, probably not putting any money on any of those teams. Maybe a few bucks on the Green Bay Packers there. All right, folks, that's the rundown with the latest Super Bowl favorites as we head into the NFL regular season. This is the Cam Rogers Show presented by Autolist. Looking for a new or used car out there? Tired of browsing a million sites? Go to Autolist.com to browse the largest source of inventory on the web, or download their top-rated mobile app for iPhone or Android today. We thank you guys for tuning into the program so far. Let's get into some NBA Finals talk real quick, and then I'll get back to the developing story regarding the Philadelphia 76ers. It's Cleveland, it's Golden State, yet again. Game 1 Thursday, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The 4th consecutive matchup between these two in the finals. The first time that any two teams have faced each other 4 times in a row in the championship round in any of the 4 U.S. sports, major U.S. sports there. And both teams needed Game 7s to get it done. And as you take a look at some of the recent NBA Finals results here, it's been a lot of LeBron of late, I'd say, since 2010, in fact. So LeBron, arguably the greatest player of all time, with really an unbelievable playoff performance to this day, averaging 34 points per game, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. He is obviously the guy who sets the tone for the Cleveland Cavs. And I'll tell you what, the Cleveland Cavaliers are loving their situation right now. Why? Because the Golden State Warriors are minus 1,000 favorites to win the NBA Finals. The Cleveland Cavaliers are in the ultimate underdog role here. And you'll see in many headlines throughout all the major sports, teams love to be underdogs. They love to relish the lack of pressure. All the pressure is on the likes of the Golden State Warriors. Kevin Durant versus LeBron, I think that's the key matchup there. Durant has guarded James the most during the season, guarded 77 possessions. LeBron shot 50% when guarded by Durant and 17% from the three-point line. Will LeBron guard Durant? That's the big-time question mark. Durant shot 67% against James this season. And by the way, Andre Iguodala, big-time injury there for the Golden State Warriors. If he is out for a long period of time, feeds into the Cleveland Cavs and their chances to win the NBA Finals. I got the Warriors in 6 games here. Let me know what you guys think will happen in the NBA Finals. Be sure to hit me up in the comments on Facebook Live as well as YouTube. All right, folks, let's wrap up the program with the developing story here, revisiting what broke last night. The 76ers GM, Bryan Colangelo, has been linked to several Twitter burner accounts where he allegedly criticized players, executives, and so much more here, coming from The Ringer here. So The Ringer did a long investigative report where Colangelo went to extreme lengths to attack Sixers players, including Joel Embiid, star center there for the Philadelphia 76ers. Colangelo admitted to using one of the 5 Twitter accounts in his long statement, which reads as follows. Like many of my colleagues in sports, I have used social media as a means to keep up with the news. While I have never posted anything whatsoever on social media, interesting point there, I have used the @Phila123456 Twitter account referenced in this story to monitor our industry and current events. So, okay, he's just using it to keep track of news and all this stuff. Goes on to say, this storyline is disturbing to me on many levels, as I am not familiar with any of the other accounts that have been brought to my attention, nor do I know who is behind them or what their motives may be in using them. Now, in regards to Embiid, The Ringer claims one of Colangelo's burner accounts actually attacked Joel during the 2016-2017 season for being, quote, an idiot whose head is getting too big. Well, Embiid recently had a conversation with Colangelo saying, quote, he called me just to deny the story. Gotta believe him until proven otherwise. If true, though, that would be really bad. One of the accounts in question also scolded Embiid for taking off his shirt and dancing at a Meek Mill concert when he was out because of a knee injury. Now, actually, Embiid kind of poked fun at all this on Twitter last night and all this stuff, but eventually said that he believes his general manager and, will, stand by him via the conversation that they had. And Colangelo has also criticized number 1 draft pick Markelle Fultz, former Philly Stars Nerlens Noel, as well as former 76ers GM Sam Hinkie. And there's Joel's tweet from last night. So that was more of having fun, and then he eventually went on and said, but all jokes aside, yeah, I believe our current GM here. By the way, to put a bow on this, The Ringer approached the 76ers with 2 of the 5 Twitter accounts asking if they are linked to Bryan Colangelo. The 76ers got back to The Ringer. The Ringer also tracked what happened with those other 3 Twitter accounts, which eventually went from public to private. Interesting. Is there some there with this whole situation? And the final takeaway point that I want you guys to have here as you go on your merry way and as I wrap up the show, Is this a systemic chronic issue, not just in the NBA, but also in major sports where GMs and high-level executives have these burner accounts, not just to browse the news, because that's a normal thing, but to criticize players and to disrupt the cohesiveness of a franchise, which is totally counterintuitive to what your job description says as a general manager or high-level exec. So there you go. All right, folks, I'll be back here on Friday morning, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. If you missed any of the show, keep it right here on this video. I'm Cam Rogers, and we'll see you next time.